Hello and good afternoon, everyone. This is Naishad Gadani coming to you from an overcast and soon to be rainy day in Melbourne. And today is 222nd episode, triple two episode of Career Care Package. It's a long journey that me and Caroline started at the start of the pandemic, and we didn't realize, but we are still in the pandemic and we are still doing it. Obviously we shifted our kind of we went back doing a daily LinkedIn live show to doing a weekly LinkedIn live show Friday at 12 p.m. And we will be talking still about careers and jobs and employment. The whole idea of career care package is that to bring some hope and optimism into people's life that are hugely impacted one or the other way, directly or indirectly. Our lives have been impacted by the ongoing pandemic, in Australia and some, and also all across the world. And today's topic is, what do you want to do with your life? Now, that's an interesting one, right? We are talking to Claire Harvey, and she'll introduce herself shortly. She's a career development practitioner like myself, and we met each other a few weeks back at the Career Development Association Australia's breakfast. Well, it was a e-breakfast. We were all having breakfast at our home, not at a cafe, but it was great to meet her, and that's how we started to chat. And she's our guest today. And for those who are missing KB, she's got a family emergency to deal with, so we wish her all the best. She'll be back very soon. But in the meanwhile, let's welcome Claire Harvey. Claire, let's start with telling people, what do you do?
What do I do now? I am a career development practitioner at a school. It's a K to 12 school in that we have a early learning centre with 3 and 4 year olds and a primary school. One of the wonderful opportunities there is this capacity to start those career conversations even earlier than high school. So I'm a bit frustrated because that was one of my big plans for this year, to do a bit more innovation, and COVID again has just stymied some of my best laid plans and intentions. So,
Yeah.
but prior to that, I've worked as an accountant and doing business administration, and also shifted gears into carbon accounting. So I've got quite a messy but interesting resume.
Carbon accounting. I've only heard of it, and we'll probably do another LinkedIn live show to help us demystify what carbon accounting is. But also, you didn't tell that you are also an independent counselor of City of Frankston too. That's an enormous responsibility and on a public domain. How did you get into that?
How did I had a good friend, actually. We went out for dinner and she looked me in the eye at the end of the meal. She goes, "I have something to ask you." And I thought, oh, this is not how usually dinners out with friends go, especially during the pandemic. Well, between lockdowns, obviously. But she said, "I really think you should run for local council." And I sat with it and then discarded the idea. And I think then we had lockdowns, and then I thought, who am I kidding? But in the end, a friend helped talk me into it. And we've got 3 wards in Frankston, and we thought, oh, let's campaign together, one of us in each ward, not campaign against each other or do this sort of vote passing,
Yeah.
preference stealing kind of stuff, which looks underhanded and I don't really appreciate. But so I said yes to them, thinking that the moral support and even just enjoying the journey would be great. But then we went into lockdown again. So if I hadn't committed to run with others, I would have pulled my hat back out of the ring. But I was committed because I'd said yes to friends. So there you go. It was very much a leap of faith because sustainability is important to me. So I didn't do flyers or signage or anything, and just sort of had my 300 words and some
Wow.
online events. And I thought, people either like me or they don't. And if they don't like me, then I'm probably not the best person to represent them anyway. So there you
That's a
go.
huge risk, because I know my wife ran for both the years. One was in 2016 that she ran, also 2020, and it was, I've seen her so stressed out about getting the message out, and I think lockdown did not help at all
Mm,
with
mm.
getting the message out, going to the right constituents and everything else. But it's amazing that you were able to pull that through. We'll talk about those musings separately. Let's talk about careers. And obviously your area of interest and expertise is around K to 12, but a lot of these learnings are also applied into adult career transition or career selections as well. Tell us
Mm.
about where people really start off with. Where do people start when they think about career? And I will probably tell a little backstory about my career journey as well. Most of the people, I'm a mechanical engineer by education, and I think it was at a very, in fact, I scored great results in economics and business
Mm.
management while my university days, but I did not notice anything at all. I didn't notice any trend that I was pretty average when it comes to maths, engineering maths. And I was pretty
Mm.
good with economics and understanding how things work and how business works and everything else. But I didn't realize that I was not able to like kind of breach that. I was kind of struggling to why is it happening? I should be great with maths. I should be great with engineering stuff, but I'm not great with it. So I realized it many, many years after that I should have chosen more of humanities, arts, or HR or something like that in my undergrad rather than engineering. But is it that you see normal, how people are kind of trial error and then figuring out what are some of your observation, where should people start to look for?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of trial and error. And I think too, a lot of us learn not so much about what we're deeply passionate about or what we're necessarily excellent at, but what we're not great at and what we don't love. That's how I started out. I guess I hadn't tapped into some of my deeper passions, or maybe hadn't given myself permission to pursue them because they were less predictable or secure. But I knew what I didn't like and what I didn't want
Mm,
to do. And for example, in my case, starting out with accountancy was it fitted my temperament, my personality. I was orderly. I like putting things in boxes. I think back to when I was really young. I think I wanted to work at a post office sorting mail, and that's one of those temperament-driven things. I'm an organizer. I'm a sorter. I want things coded and categorized right, and that's kind of the bread and butter of accounting. Is it in the right box? Have we balanced? Have we
agree.
balanced it? So you can see those deeply wired personality traits, but it meant that I probably looked around at a lot of courses and thought, that's not for me. I wasn't
Mm,
deeply passionate about accounting, but it made sense. And I
mm,
think for some of us, start with what makes sense, particularly with COVID. Like we are looking at a report that came out yesterday, and it was actually about how coronavirus impacted the class of 2020. So they're now able to
mm,
do research looking at COVID and how it impacted last year's year 12s. And I would say one of the findings is they're now much more risk averse. And that's realistic. They're thinking about where are the secure jobs. They know
mm.
it's not in travel or tourism or
Yeah.
entertainment or hospitality. They get that. A huge shift. I think an extra quarter of people, so almost 25%, said that they've changed their mind and they're now interested in health and medicine. Now, it might
Wow.
be that it's on their radar in a way that it never was before, but it's also, I see that that's where the jobs are. Whether
Mm,
it's being an immunologist or whether it's working as a concierge in a vaccination clinic, secure work, or nursing, frontline
yeah.
stuff. Like that's where the jobs are. And I think people have realized maybe for the first time in their living memory, I can't take things for granted in the way that I used to. So I've got to
Mm,
rethink. And I think that's going to be one of the challenges, and we might touch on that more today. There's the
yeah.
idealism of dreaming and our best case scenario in our wildest dreams, how would I want it to look? And then there's being almost realistically pessimistic to go, okay, but if this continues and think the cards don't fall my way, what are the basics I need to get right? Like I need a job. And I
Mm.
think we've come out of this golden age of being told that no, it's not just about a job. Dream big. You can do anything you want. That kind of rug's been pulled out from underneath us a bit, I think.
Yeah. But have you seen people are now seeking for more, in our language, we say more meaning to the
Yes.
work. Do you see that people are now looking at, I really want to, I know I'm, there's obviously a kind of, things which is, floating around that the resignation, the big resignation is coming. That means there is an expectation that there will be hundreds and thousands of people all across the world are going to resign from the work because they have found out that that's not their calling. They are now seeking more and more interesting stuff to do with their careers, right? And they've taken on something on the side right now while they are sitting at home. So have you seen that people are becoming more and more attuned to what their calling is?
I think people are asked. I think there's a real tension. I think there's data coming out of the States that in North America and in Europe, that's already happening because there's a sense that people are in their new normal, freedom days and just learning to
Yeah.
live with it. Whereas we're still locked down. Like we're
Yeah.
not thinking, we're thinking that's in the future. What's in the pipeline, what we might like to do. We're not there yet. I think
Mm,
it will come, but there's this massive tension between this idealism and the life I'd love to have, and then the need to actually be realistic about putting food on the table and knowing that JobKeeper and JobSeeker are not going to be there forever in the way that they have been. Like the government can't just keep pumping money into the economy. So I think it's a fascinating question. And I see those seeds were there before coronavirus. We've got corporations becoming B corporations that are for purpose, not just for profit. We want to make a
mm,
difference in the world. We want to make our products sustainably. We want to make sure that workers are being treated fairly. And yes, we need a profit, but that's almost subsidiary to our primary goal of making a difference in the world. And people are doing that in their own life, saying, I'll take a pay cut to be part of a team that brings me joy. Reventure's done interesting research highlighting
hmm.
that people are actually looking for friendship at work. 100 years
Wow.
ago, that was not a thing.
No.
Now people have this expectation. If that's where I spend the majority of my waking hours, I want to be with people I like, where I have friends. It's like that was not a thing even 20, 30 years ago.
Yes.
The challenges for employers who don't just have to provide work and salary and performance appraisals, but this sense of fun and community. But again, I think that's a really crucial piece that has come onto people's radars in a new way. We've
Mm,
been locked down and haven't been able to see people. And we've said, I could have all the money or all the stuff in the world or the most beautiful home. And if I don't have people to enjoy it with, if I can't connect, then none of it seems to matter. So that relationship connection piece, I reckon, is vital as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So true. I started my last job in July of start of the second lockdown, and I met my boss in March of this year.
Mm,
So after 9 months, I met him, and I met my team that they were reporting to me after 4 to 5 months, and it was as somebody was leading the team, it was pretty challenging for me to keep them engaged, keep them kind of inspired about the work that we were doing. We would have to talk, whether that's more informal meetings, whether there is more different activities that we did, whether there were more brainstorming, more blue sky thinking sessions. And so as somebody who led the team, I can vouch for that that's what in those times people were looking for. I think connection is something that we all have taken granted for many
mm,
years, and now
mm.
we're suddenly starting to realize the importance of it. But you also, if I can also ask you question, as a counselor, as a public leader, you also have got huge workforce, right? How you have seen that, in that domain, people are
I've been interested
doing that.
actually in
Yeah.
the turnover statistics. Without oversharing, Frankston City Council is one of the region's larger employers.
Mm,
We do have Peninsula Health here, but again, that expands sort of beyond down to the peninsula. We've got Chisholm, we've got Monash, but we've again just got one of many campuses, so it's hard to get the numbers. Um, but yeah, our turnover is way down. But I think that's this
mm,
theory of going, why on earth in the middle of a pandemic would you quit a good job that you have? But I think it's when we find our way out onto the other side, we'll see whether or not the loyalty is genuine or if
yeah.
people are just hedging their bets and playing it safe.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's pretty much right. People are obviously hanging on to what what are they doing right now, just because there is so much uncertainty about whether they are able to pay mortgages, credit cards, to and everything else. Now let's go back to the career stuff.
Mm.
Claire, tell us about the kind of important your own values make. Why does your own value makes a very important role in the way you choose your career or the way you go about finding your career? And how do you really, find out whether what you value is something that is aligned to, or which is congruent to the roles that you are seeking? How do you really do that exercise?
Yeah, I think it's a painful one, often of learning the hard way, when we only recognize it when we come up with opposing values, or there's conflict, or there's tension. Again, like understanding ourselves and learning about us, it's when we come up against people who are different and we suddenly go, oh, I thought everyone was like that. But no, we've met someone that's very different in their values or the way they communicate or interact. So again, it's in engaging in probably multiple spheres and multiple relationships that we learn more about how we're wired. And it's often when there's deep incongruence that we go, oh, right, that's something I really struggle with. And but that said, I'm someone very passionate about value alignment, whereas there are other people that are much happier to be a small cog in a big wheel and say, yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind what this company's doing or how it's doing it. I enjoy my role and I like the two people I work with either side. I'm fine with that. Others of us will say no, like if I'm not on board with what they're doing and how they're making their money or their mission statement or whatever, I'm out of here. Now that in itself is a difference in sort of personality, temperament. I'm an Enneagram 1, so we're the reformers. We're always sort of striving for some perfect ideal. It's probably not attainable. So I think, yeah, it's that trial and error, and it's rubbing up against different values and finding that clash. And instead of just getting angry, maybe that's where we need to go, okay, what's going on here?
Hmm.
What does this tell me? Not so much about them, but
Hmm.
me. Where are the boundaries? Where will I compromise? And where will I say, no, I can't do this anymore? But
Hmm.
we mentioned this just in a casual chat the other day. That's part of our privilege, though, isn't it? That we can afford
Yeah.
to be, that we can afford to say, oh, I'm sure I'll find something somewhere else. Again, that's not a privilege that everyone has if it's
Agree.
paycheck to
Agree.
paycheck. Yeah.
Yeah, agree. And one of the things that I have made, kind of one of the theory that I operate from is that either you find, work that is meaningful, or either you add meaning to the work that you do.
Mm,
Because even though, let's say, you work for a enterprise which is polluting the environment, right? And you work there, you don't like it, but can you find a meaning? If you can't quit, can you find a meaning that allows you to function, that allows you to give your optimum, productivity and everything else? I think that's equally important, going back to the idea of privilege, that some people are able to afford. They know what, I'm not going to bother about it. I've got social, security payment coming through. I've got this helps. I'm not going to bother about going and working with something that I don't really align with. But for a lot of the people, it's not the case. It's that they have to, doesn't matter what work they do. It's
mm.
just, they have to put the, food on the table, where the family is really looking, for that security and everything. And so I think that, it's like continuous, that thing going on. And sometimes I think people find a way out of it. People, I've seen, I don't know, in your experience, but people start their own thing because
Mm.
they've seen that as well. So I think I'm also seeing about that, people are starting their side hustles and ideas around this, because they are so sick and tired of, that they are not able to solve a problem.
Mm.
And a lot of this, have you seen those examples, in your life, that people started something on their own just because they can't see the change happening where they were working?
Yeah. Yeah. Even the report that came out yesterday about year 12s, 40% of them took up a new hobby last year. And then a lot of them changed their mind on what they wanted to study or which uni they wanted to go to. Um, Interesting story about a friend who's a physiotherapist. She got tired of the industry, which in a sense thrives by ensuring people are getting better but not fully better, because if you cure them, they won't come back. So you need to give them enough treatment that they go, oh, that was good, but you don't want them completely well, because then you got no clients. She got frustrated from a value alignment and said, I can't be a part of this anymore. always had an artistic and very hands-on kind of maker orientation. So she started making her own jewelry, but it didn't last more than a year because she said in the end she felt enslaved in her own sweatshop.
Mm.
This pressure then to make, compare what you could earn as a physiotherapist to
Absolutely.
trying to make enough money out of selling jewelry that you're making at home. Like, I think there will be some really interesting successes that come out of these side hustles, but there'll be also a lot of people that go, that was harder than I thought it was going to be. And actually to make it profitable, again, have you done the numbers? We learn though through all of that. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a waste. It's again part of the
Yeah.
trial and error and the learning by doing. This value alignment question, there's that phrase, do you live to work or do you work to live?
Mm.
And I think that's a really interesting kind of framing. Some people live to work, and work is at the center of
Yeah.
what fulfills them, where their identity is, where their security is. That's not necessarily bad. And particularly in some careers, there's no other way to do it. Like, I think if you want to train towards being a specialist surgeon or even a high level politician, like, it demands nearly everything you've got. There's no
Yeah.
way to do that as a side hustle. You got to be driven. You got to be focused. You got to really want it. Or you won't make it because it's highly competitive and you have too many days where you go, why am I doing this again? You got to have a compelling answer. But then there's other people who are happy to say, I've got plenty of areas in my life that are deeply fulfilling. My grandchildren, my connection to the community garden, my involvement at the community house where we do Zumba, my book club. Again, a lot of those are relational things, but people have lots of areas of life and work just pays the bills. And it's a different lens through which to view the whole career question. That's one of, I think, many pieces. But research has also indicated there's some pretty strong gender differences there. And I don't want to necessarily open that can of worms fully. But the research suggests that when they ask women to reflect on their life and key decisions, they pick key decisions around family and relationship. Like having the children and who I partnered with and why.
Yeah.
Men tend to, and again, there's some statistical averages and norms in here, but it does fit the stereotype. Men tend to look back at key decisions and think about study and job and career transition. So there might be some wiring stuff in there in terms of just how much emphasis we give to that career piece and why. I meet plenty of young kids that say, I think I want to work with animals, and I dig, and they love animals. And I'm like, you can work with animals, but you could also just have pets. And that can be part of home and part of what gives colour and texture and fun and fuzz in your life, a companion. Everyone's got these animal companions now. That's been a COVID kind of spike, hasn't it? But there's lots of young people that just think, what do I know about myself? Same with sport, same with music. I love music or I love sport because they've had affirmation. They've tried it and they know they like it. But what kid grows up going, facilities management, that's so me, or town planning?
No.
Like, again, they haven't tasted it. They've had no affirmation that they're going to be good at it. So they're just not on the radar. So I don't want to myth bust or dream crush, but sometimes in working with young people, I sort of say, you love sport and music and animals because those are things in your life. There's a lot that you've not been exposed to yet. And that's one of the things I want to do with young kids. They sort of, I think the BBC actually took up research findings from the Victorian Parliamentary Inquiry saying you want to do career education with 8-year-olds at grade 3. They freaked out. The BBC picked this up. And it's like, not career decisions.
Exactly.
Career education. And I had a textbook that my prep son brought home, one of his early readers, and it was about counting to 3. 3 nurses, and it has a picture of nurses, 3 women holding babies. 3 nurses. How gendered is that? Nursing is for women.
It's women,
babies, right? And then it's 3 astronauts, and it's 3 men in spacesuits. And I'm like, that is career education right there happening informally. So that's part of what we're talking about.
Wow,
It's
not interesting.
Just what to do, but are we actually expanding their sense of what's possible and making sure it's not gendered in a way that a woman wouldn't think that she might not make a great Sparky or Fitter and Turner?
Yeah. And I think going back to, I was just reflecting on what you just said about when you ask a woman about reflecting on the decisions and a man. As part of my post-grad with careers, we were asked to do an Odyssey plan as part of our subject, that 5-year plan design there, right?
Mm,
And one of the
mm,
things that I did immediately is that where do I want to take my private practice or my career in. That's what I did. And I went back to my looking at the plan with some other sample plans, and they have done where what do they want to do with their family, taking them out for a Disneyland trip, or doing this. I said, hang on, where is them, where is, I just immediately had this moment of aha, that, oh god, this is all about me. Obviously they will be, they are beneficiary of it, but it's like, where are they? I'm not even writing anything about my kids or my wife and what are we going to do as a family. That wasn't even existent for me until 6 months back when I was looking at that one, right?
mm,
So I can fully understand. We got a comment from Sue. She says that meaning could be a job for now and leading towards something else later. Absolutely, Sue. Thank you. And if you got any anecdotes, if you got any stories to tell about your career, how did you come up with your career? Please continue to share. And also, if you got any questions for Claire, please
mm,
drop that in the chat box as well. Claire, one of the thing is that once you've kind of worked out this is where I want to go, then you got to align everything, and then you got to structure everything around it, right? Because it doesn't happen. Forget about structuring the career. If I change that, or we might be going out on this week, and I have to restructure everything again, with my life to make sure that I'm able to do it with kids' activities and everything else. Career is a giant thing. It's like a big thing. What are some of the things that people can do? And if you've got, any stories to tell about because you have also constructed your career and kind of
mm.
aligning everything around it. So please share your views on that.
I'm still in the middle of life design, but one of the things I like to reflect on, because I never went to sort of science engineering and sort of knew I didn't have that sciencey brain, or maybe not. Yeah, I could do it, but it didn't interest me. Perhaps my dad was the engineer, and he bought me a book called How Things Work, I think for like my 16th or 15th birthday. And I'm like, oh, I wish I was more interested in. I'm interested in what things can do for me. What can it do? How can it help me? But how it does what it does, I didn't want to pull it apart and understand it and put it back together. So I didn't have that engineering brain. But I'm naturally numerical. So when people
Mm,
sort of uh, tend to sort of think about money and what they spend, I'll naturally go, wow, that's a lot. If you extrapolate that over a year, like when I started at university, I had friends spending $10 every day in the union building on lunch. And I just went, wow, like if we're here 40 weeks of the year, add that up, and so I naturally do the sums. But similarly with, I guess, our lifestyle aspirations, I think there's a lot of people that carry a lot of debt because they think it's
mm,
essential, and it forces them into maybe a class of wage slavery that they don't need to be in, but they can't see the choice with that. Contrast that to maybe a really artistic kind of person that loves a sort of bohemian communities where people wanted
mm,
to
mm,
paint or write, just live that simple, that wholehearted life where they could pursue their passion. They're not living in communes almost to live as simply as possible. Now, yeah, people will go, that sounds pretty close to being a cult, and we're so far removed from that now because we're so individualistic. But I think there are options. There are still creative options to go, can I live with less to enable me to have a richer life where I can pursue more of what I love? Co-housing is something that we're trying to get happening
mm,
down here. So you have
mm,
our model is 8 dwellings and then shared space. Unfortunately, at the moment, there's so many barriers. Co-housing is not affordable to create in Australia at the moment, unless maybe you're way out in some rural area where land's
yeah.
really cheap. But the goal is, if nothing else, it will be cheaper to live there because you will share
Mm,
more. You will live with less. We don't all need a lawnmower. We're actually planning to share a laundry. You could have common meals where you cook in bulk. We could have actually a little pantry co-op thing where we
mm,
purchase dry goods or organic food in bulk to go. I could never afford to buy organic food just for us. But if we
yeah.
do that together and get wholesale, maybe we can either
Agree.
live with or support our values, which is we'd like to support more organic farmers, that sort of thing. So
Mm,
that comes down to even the housing market, and there's not much diversity of stock there. That you look at the price of housing, and that there's so many couples that would say, "Oh, we both have to work." And
mm,
again, that's loaded with assumptions, though, that you have
yeah.
to live in this kind of house in this kind of suburb. Um, that said, we've talked about relationship is so important, and people need to be near family. Like that
Mm,
can be another career decision. I worked with a Sri Lankan lady once, and a few people were quite shocked that her daughter was just 6 months and she wanted full time work. And she explained, she says, in my culture, that's what my parents are there for. They will look after my kids and take them to and from school, just like I will do that for my children's children.
mm,
Culturally, that's really normal.
yeah.
Other people thought, what are you doing back at work? Your kids are so small. So, but again, that means proximity to family is then vital, which means you can't say you've got to go and live out past Pakenham where housing's cheap,
Mm,
because that erodes social fabric. That's not fair
mm,
either. So, yeah, we're at a council level, we're looking at affordable housing and key worker accommodation. We're seeing in places like Apollo Bay
mm,
um, that they can't get staff at their bakery. They've got all
exactly.
those people
Yeah.
wanting to live down there. People can't afford to live there, and so they're
Yeah.
short staffed. So we've got labour crisis issues, and there's stories in LA, I think, sort of coming out of Hollywood and California, where they had bushfires and
Yes.
all the frontline workers, in terms of emergency services, you can call them, but they live an hour away. So
Mm,
it's
because they
not
could
just
not afford to
an
live
economic
there.
cost, there was a property and human life cost in terms of going, the people we need to call on to help us have to live so far away that they're not here when we need them. That's
Wow.
where the council questions are really interesting in terms of affordable housing. Can people afford to live where they want to live, to be near opportunities for work, study, to maintain family and social connection? So, yeah, I like the mess and the intersection. It doesn't make it straightforward, but I
Agree.
think when you try to silo out these issues and tackle them on their own, it doesn't work.
No,
You're
doesn't
not going
work.
to get
Yeah.
solutions that actually work in the real world.
Yeah, yeah, wow, fascinating, isn't it? As somebody, who's not exposed to that, you don't realize how much interconnected that saying around that a butterfly flutters in Amazon causes, storm in Melbourne is, sometimes sounds pretty difficult to understand, but that's how interconnected systems are. If we can also start to look at the area of, because you did mention about the impact of climate change and the impact on jobs and new careers. Do you want to shed some light on that, because that's a subject that we haven't tackled so far on our show. It's something that I think we should talk about it, because we saw these horrific images coming out of New York. The subway is completely being flooded, and obviously I'm not an expert on that, whether climate change or change in the nature is the only thing that's causing it. But still I think those are the questions that being asked. What are kind of your observations around what kind of new jobs would come out of this challenge that we are facing?
Some are exciting in terms of renewable energy. How do we transition to cleaner sources of power? And one of the pluses there is jobs that are more evenly distributed. So if you think about people generating power on their roof using rooftop solar, that creates jobs for electricians to install and maintain and repair right across our city, compared to digging up coal in central Queensland, or the minerals boom that we had in Perth, where you create this really artificial bubble. The price of labour goes up, the price of housing goes up, but it's short-lived and it's not evenly distributed at all. So I think that's a really exciting opportunity, because the jobs are everywhere. And it doesn't mean that you've got to move to some offshore oil rig in the middle of the ocean and do this FIFO style stuff, although there might be wind turbines and we might tap
Yeah.
into wave power. So there might still be things like that. But So exciting opportunities around innovation, particularly waste, this circular economy
Yeah.
that is going, let's look at the packaging, let's look at the product, let's make the producers responsible for dealing with it at the other end. Um, I think there are markets that will probably die, that will probably have to die. It's interesting that we get so concerned about the fossil fuel industry, but no one was complaining about, photo processing labs and what happened to Kodak with the shift to digital. Like,
Yeah.
no one bemoaned all of those jobs that were left. We didn't care. We all used to take our rolls of film for processing. Big
I
rise,
remember that.
job losses there. And again, all this focus on the fossil fuel industry. And Richard Dennis is one of my favourite economists with the Australia Institute. He said, who are we kidding? We're going to have a barista-led economy. The way people need their takeaway coffee, like what is keeping our economy afloat at the moment? Again, when you look at the proportion of jobs, so yeah, there's going to be job losses. There's going to be radical shifts. Transport's another one that fascinates me.
Mm.
There is the electric vehicle market, but I think we also need to wean ourselves off the idea of privately owned vehicles, and that excites me. Imagine fewer cars on the road and fewer
Yeah.
privately owned vehicles. Most of us have cars that spend 95 to 98% of their life sitting there not being used. How is that
Mm.
an efficient use of resources? Like, really?
Mm.
Most
Mm.
of the time, they're just sitting there. So what does that mean for public transport, for shared user paths, to get people walking, cycling, infrastructure around that? What if we have self-driving vehicles? What might that mean? Those sorts of things excite me. And there's all sorts of well-being pluses there, that people are more likely to bump into people, to have conversations, to connect socially. It's better for their well-being in terms of being in nature and being fit.
Yeah.
But it's deeply inconvenient, and that's where we need to we will have to. It's like that Al Gore movie, isn't it? The Inconvenient Truth. The
Yes.
inconvenient truth is we've been fiercely driven by convenience. All this disposable
Yeah.
stuff. My friend spent a year living in New York, and she said she knew households that only ever ate off disposable crockery and
Wow.
cutlery because they didn't like doing dishes. Every
Wow.
meal time, you would clear the table and put the stuff in the bin, and you just go, that's
Wow.
frightening. But it's about convenience, isn't it? And the
Yeah.
stuff's so cheap. So you've either got to make it not available or tax it so that it's
Yeah.
expensive and people don't want to do that. So we're seeing that,
Mm.
aren't we, with phasing out single-use plastics. That's not just we need alternative products, but it might be that we have completely different ways of consuming and shopping.
Yeah.
And what might
Yeah.
that look like? There's a model of a van that actually goes around with, I think it's like things like cleaning products and shampoo and conditioner. So instead of you going to one of those little organic shops that might survive but probably won't, you see them spring up, you go,
Yeah.
oh, that's so good to see, Whole Foods, organics, and you can fill up your bottles, and you mean to shop there, and you do, but it's quite expensive, and then they're gone because it didn't work. They didn't get the support. Whereas this was a truck so that you could have all your bottles and
Ah.
you could fill your shampoo and conditioner and cleaning products. I'm like, that's a new thing. Imagine instead
Absolutely.
of Mr. Whippy, this van coming down your street and you go and fill up your empties. I sort of think, who knows?
Mm.
So there's lots of space for
Yeah.
innovation.
Yeah. In fact, many years back in India, we used to get milk delivered to us. So, the milkman would come to our home and would actually take the milk out and deliver to us rather than giving it in a plastic bag. Then what started was glass bottles. So
Mm.
you can actually return those glass bottles and get new ones. So
Well, that was
you're
that
not
was the same when I was a child.
exactly.
That's how it
And
was.
I
That's why
remember my
they're called milk bars. That's what milk bars were about. That's
exactly.
where you had your account.
Exactly. And my mom would wake up 6 o'clock because this milkman would come pretty early in the morning on their bicycle or on their motorbike, and would have large cans on the either side of that to make sure that it is balanced. But they would have the measurement with them, and they would give you straight, and then you use it. So no wastage in terms of that. So I
Mm,
think I think you're
mm.
you're absolutely right. I think we are going to see a huge shift in that segment, and that will also create interesting job opportunities that we don't even see that exist. In fact, I think there's a website being launched. I think it's called 100 Jobs of the Future, which is
Yes,
done
I'm
by
waiting for that.
Deakin
Yeah.
Deakin University and Ford, and some other three players are doing it, which would be fantastic to see what future 10 future jobs that we don't even see that exist right now, what would happen.
Well, and
That's
I
great.
guess one of the more negative ones, there's the positives, the more negatives is like I noticed CQ University has a bachelor in emergency management. And I sort of think, yeah, that's probably going to be a thing. We're going to have more emergencies. You look, they're still cleaning up in the Dandenongs outside Melbourne, the Dandenong
Yeah.
Ranges. They're still clearing up and they've
Wow.
chipped a whole lot of the trees. And now local residents can go and get that mulch for free,
Ah,
which
okay.
actually helps the council because council's got to deal
Yes.
with it. But they can't keep
Yeah.
these piles of mulch there forever because
Agree.
they're gonna catch on fire in a couple of months. So
Exactly.
really pressing issues, whether it's flood or fire or heat wave or storm damage or storm surges or erosion of our beaches, like we're going to need to pay a lot more attention to responding to these and also to try and figure out what's in the pipeline and how to prepare ourselves and
Mm,
adapt. So, and then the health impacts, things like heat waves. How do we protect vulnerable populations? We need to plant more
yeah.
trees. This urban heat island effect that our cities are getting hotter. We really, really need our trees. You know, they provide
Absolutely.
shade and cooling, and they're more vital than ever.
Mm, wow, it's a different can of worms. We'll probably have to, do another, show, Claire, on talking about this, because I think this everything that you spoke about, being, I think you've got an interesting kind of combination of someone who works in public policy, but also
Mm,
someone who works on careers as well. So you can actually see the impact of lot of whether that's council policies to state government, federal government, and whatever policies on work and career and training and the longevity of careers, as
mm,
well. So we'll probably have to do another show where we can focus more on these impacts, because it's a great discussion to have. I think,
mm.
what you call, going back to what you just said, is that these are the, it's like convenience is what is causing this. We still have to talk about this, howsoever uncomfortable, and really, kind of learning new things, as is. But I think we still got to talk about it. Claire, it's been absolutely fascinating catching up with you, and thank you very much for coming along on our show. We absolutely love, diverse perspective, new ideas about career. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been great. Thank you.
Excellent. And for those people, I'm going to do another shameless plug for the product that me and Caroline have, worked on, which is called Cards Against Insanity. If you do not know about it, just go to my LinkedIn page and you'll be able to find out. I'll put a link on that too. But go ahead and grab a Cards Against Insanity. It's going to stop you going mad when you're looking for work. It's a very simple way of really finding work. And we got a comment from Sue. Claire is amazing. I agree that policy needs to be updated and public needs to be more involved with the process and contribute. Thank you, Sue, for your contribution. And a LinkedIn user, which I can't really say, it says, great discussion. Thanks, Claire and Naisha. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Next week, Friday, we will be talking to TJ. She's an outplacement expert. She's been around talent connections for a long period of time. So we'll be talking about and playing the game Cards Against Insanity with her. But if you're in Melbourne, Victoria, or New South Wales, please look after yourself. Please wear mask and get vaccinated when you are eligible. And until we see you next Friday, see you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.